Welcome to the Academic Woman Amplified podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Mazak, tenured full professor, mom of three, and firm believer that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Sometimes it feels like your writing is competing with your teaching, but it really isn't. The more writing and research you do, the better teacher you become. That is what the university and college and post-secondary learning is all about. Having teacher researchers in the classroom and learning from experts. But man, organizing yourself and dealing with all the multiple pulls on your time, especially at this particular moment of the semester, seems to set up those three main areas of your academic career, right? Research, teaching, and service at odds with each other. But of course, they're not. They work together to create your career. So today we're talking about how to manage teaching at these moments of the semester where it feels like it takes over and shuts down everything else. If you're listening in real time and you are on a traditional North American semester system, then you are in what I call the throes of the academic semester. It's week 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, depending on where you started. And probably you are overwhelmed with your classroom teaching right now. Why? Well, when we get to this moment in the semester, we probably are a little bit behind on grading, maybe even behind on prep, especially if we're teaching a new prep. And our students are feeling the same way that we are. They feel behind. And so what happens is, as they feel behind in multiple classes, they become more and more needy, right? They need us more. They lean on us more for support. Some people are looking at their grades and they're saying, oh man, I need to make a change. And we can criticize the students, but I don't think we should. Everyone goes through this same ebb and flow in the semester. Now, in last week's podcast, I talked more about this. I talked specifically about how to manage writing at this particular moment of the semester. So you might want to go back and listen to episode 10 if what you're trying to do is persist with writing through this particular time in the semester. But today, what I want to talk about, or in this episode, what I want to talk about is what you can do for your teaching to help give breathing room to the other things that you're doing, particularly at this moment of the semester. Now, I'm going to give you some tips for things to do right now, so kind of survival mechanism kinds of things. And then I'm going to talk about how to prep for next semester. I know I'm already talking about next semester, but seriously, we need to think about it a little bit in advance, so that you can be your best self in all the ways that you are an academic, in teaching, research, and service, and all the sub things and not included things that don't get one of those holy trinity spots in the way we talk about our careers. I want to give you tips for prepping, teaching for next semester, and just making your overall life easier, because if your academic career is filled with ease, you will create knowledge in a better way, in a bigger way. You'll be a better teacher, a better professor, a better mentor, and a bigger asset to your institution and your field. So let's talk about teaching today. So first of all, let's talk about things that you can do right now at this point in the semester to help your teaching to take up less time. So one of the things is that you can reevaluate the assignments and assessments that you're doing. You might be thinking, no, but I put on the syllabus this, and this, but there are ways to wiggle around within your syllabus, right? Within your contract between you and the students that are beneficial for everybody. And these are things that I really feel like no student is going to complain about this. And it's going to make them get better feedback, and it's going to help you give them better feedback. So the first one is that if you find yourself behind on grading, you can either drop assignments depending on how much power you feel like you have within, some of us teach on a standard syllabus on a multi-section course or something, so we can't really completely drop an assignment, but you can change your grading strategy for an assignment. You can change from a letter grade to a pass-fail grade. You could change from some kind of grading where you have to give detailed feedback to grading that is based on participation. And I'm not saying you should do that for every assignment from now until the end of the semester, but when you think about the things you have left to grade, if you need to quote unquote, catch up, which we talked about in the last podcast, but if you feel like, you're behind and you want to give yourself a little breathing space, one way to go is to change up your assessment. Another thing you could do if you have a take-home assignment, you could make it an in-class assignment, which makes it less burden for the student, and it also makes the standard a little different in terms of grading. So look for and be creative about ways that you can alter your existing assignments and assessments. Really look and see if maybe you could drop an assignment without it affecting kind of the overall structure of assessment for your class. So another thing that you can do right now is to corral your prep. And what that means is to put natural boundaries on your teaching prep so that it doesn't flow into every aspect of your day. Because teaching prep can really easily take up too much time in terms of actual hours of prep compared to the number of hours that you're in the classroom. So a few things here to keep in mind. You are an expert, especially for people who are in early career, they've just got their tenure track job, or they're new to the professorate. A lot of times we feel like we need to be the end all and be all experts, and we don't. In fact, having an attitude of learning and of, I don't know about that, but I can go look it up, is a great part of your teaching persona to develop. So don't feel like you have to go in having so much background knowledge on a certain topic. Really, at this point of the semester, and again, we're talking right now about survival mechanisms, what you need to do is be 2 steps ahead of your students, and I'm sure that you can do that. So you want to corral your teaching prep by putting some natural boundaries around it. And the one that I always talk about is like what I would do would be to bump my prep up against my class. So I would have to actually stand up, walk out, and give the class, which made me do very, very efficient prep and really squeeze it into an hour or an hour and a half right before I had to go and teach the class. This is something that will help you kind of block your time and keep your teaching prep from spilling over into your writing time or other time blocks that you've created for yourself. Now, the third thing to do at this particular moment, okay, in the moment where it seems like too much is going on and you're stressed and you need to pull back the levels of stress, another thing to do is to create more participatory classes. So maybe you have been prepping formal lectures all semester. it's probably time to try some small group discussion or managed group discussion where you don't have to be doing the tap dance in front of the class for the whole time. And again, this is responding to the ebbs and flows of the semester. It's not just you who is exhausted, it is also your students. And by giving them a forum to talk to each other, to get to know their classmates better, to dive into the material in a small group discussion format, this can be a way to get yourself out of the spotlight and teach a class where you have to be a little less on, and also give them a chance to really voice their opinions about the material. So those are things to do right now. And they might mean, going from a lecture style to some group discussion classes might be a really big shift for you right now. That's okay. We're experimenting, we're learning, we're trying new things, and all of that is totally fine. You are the queen in your classroom. So make it what it needs to be for you and for your students, but also for you. It should feel good for you. It should respond to these ups and downs in the semester. Now, the best way to prep so that we handle these ups and downs in the semester is to, in advance, so thinking about next semester's prep, in advance, create time-saving mechanisms inside of your course and inside of your teaching prep. I always tell people that the best moment to start planning your syllabus for next semester is actually right now or the moment after you turned in grades. And that's because you right now remember how week 11 or 12 feels. And once you've turned in grades and taken a break, you forget. And then especially, when January comes, wow, January is a month where we can do anything. Everything is new. We're reinventing ourselves. The attitude of January is I'm going to make this year amazing attitude. But what happens is we get overzealous with our syllabus, with our assessment measures, with the way that we are thinking about our teaching. And we always need to think about how our teaching fits into our research and service, right? So how does the teaching fit into other things that we do? This is something that I teach inside of my writing roadmap course and also inside of my Amplify program, is how to do the kinds of planning that not balance, because I don't like the word balance actually, that manage different aspects of your career. And I think about it like, if you think about like a mixer, right? Like a sound mixing board, and you have little knobs that you can turn different tracks up and down. Well, imagine the things you do in your academic career as tracks and just basically teaching research and service. But let's break that down even more. It could be teaching, writing, research, and different, like you can break each one of those down a little bit more and imagine them as tracks on a sound mixing, on GarageBand or something. What you're doing when you manage your academic life in a way that is not going to burn you out is you realize that if you turn the volume up on every track, if you turn that volume up all the way to 10 on each track, first of all, it won't sound good to keep the metaphor going. But what that will lead to is burnout, because you can't do everything at level 10 out of 10 all the time. You need to adjust the volume on the different tracks. And at some moments in your career, you're going to want the volume on the teaching to be at 10. And at other moments, you're going to want the new research project volume to be at 10. And at others, the writing or clearing the pipeline. So many different things. Program creation. There's so many different big projects that we can do during our academic life. We can't do them all at one time or all with the same amount of intensity at the same time. So sometimes we need the writing to be on 10 and the teaching to be on 6. And that's okay, because there will be a moment for the teaching to be on 10. With that metaphor in mind, let's think about how you can maybe dial down the teaching, or maybe not dial down the teaching. Again, I don't want you to think of this as like we sacrifice one thing or the other, but rather we place our focus in one place over another. And what happens when we plan in January, right, is that we think, wow, we're going to do this totally amazing class and it's going to be so different from every other time. And here's all the projects and here's all the things and it's going to be amazing. And that's fantastic. But maybe it's not a volume 10 year for teaching. Maybe we need to turn down the volume a little bit. So I'm going to give you some ways that you can save time in your teaching prep and then throughout the semester so that your teaching doesn't feel like it's at volume 10. So we talked about corralling your prep. So that's the first one that I always say. I already talked about that. Another thing to do, don't reinvent the wheel every semester. Don't make it hard. In fact, what I want you to think when you're planning for next semester is, next semester, I'm going to make it easy. Easy for me. So the way that we make things easy is by not reinventing the wheel, and also by having systems and templates. And I know I say this all the time, maybe I sound like a broken record, but templates. So here's what a template might look like at the level of course design, okay? So one template might be the types of assessments that you use, right? It totally depends on your field, but when I was teaching freshman composition at University of Arizona during my master's degree, we would do 3 essays and they were structured it was like a 3-unit structure to the class, and each part of the class had an essay. So there were 3, and there would be a drafting process and a final version with rubric grading for each of those 3 sections or units in the course. That's a template. Right. That's the basic structure that you can follow. And truthfully, that is that was the first real pedagogical training that I got, was there as a master's student in the TESOL program at University of Arizona. And I feel like that was a great pedagogical teaching. In fact, that 3-unit structure is something I bring to almost all my classes. So think about ways that you can use a same structure or a similar structure and not reinvent the structure for each and every class. Probably the content that you teach, even though it might be varied, will fit into a similar structure. So you have to figure out what that structure is for you. Over the course of years, I have decided that if I don't have to grade 3 essays from each of my sections each semester, then that's better for me. And since I am a linguistics professor and I teach bilingualism and I teach how to teach and I teach research methods, I don't need to do a 3-essay structure in my classes. Something that I have actually really enjoyed, I don't know how much my students enjoy it, but they do it anyway, is doing a midterm actually. And for the English classroom, some people use this type of assessment and some people don't. But I've found that a keyword based midterm exam that is usually done in class has been a great kind of assessment structure that I can use for so many different classes. I can use that for my senior seminar in linguistics. I can use it for research methods. I can use it for sociolinguistics. I can use it for bilingualism. There's so many different course topics that I can use that same midterm structure with. So often the students will need to do like a keywords document that we build together as we go through the readings in the course. They'll have to do the keywords midterm, and we'll do a final project, and students will present the readings themselves. The first couple of readings I'll present, but then after that, they see the way that I do it. I give them a structure for doing it, and then they sign up to present it in pairs or little groups of 3. Of course, I'm speaking very specifically about the kinds of upper level and master's level linguistics courses I teach. You'll need to think about what that template structure for the semester could be for you. But you see what I'm saying, right? It shouldn't be reinvented every single time. It's good for you because it takes one more decision out of the process. And it's good for your students because if students repeat taking class with you or take a different topic with you as the professor, they know what to expect. So that is one of my tips for next semester, is to figure out what your course's template structure could be, and then don't reinvent the wheel. Keep to that same structure. Now, a question that I get a lot of the time, especially when I work with history professors, is how do I keep up on the readings myself? Okay, so there's 2 parts. It's how to keep up with the readings yourself, but also how do I make sure that my students keep up with the readings without too much prep and work for me? So again, this question comes usually from history professors, but definitely as a linguistics professor, I have dealt with this myself. So you can see how it can apply across fields. So one way to do this, the way that I found the most effective for me, has been to implement this structure where students present the reading to the other students. So in that way, I don't have to have read the material, digested it, created a lecture, walk into class and present. Instead, I'm reading along with the students, one step ahead of them. And I also, what I do is I assign readings that I myself want to read. So, again, this depends on your teaching assignments, but when I teach the sociolinguistics or the bilingualism course, I usually do a 3-unit structure. The first unit is foundational readings, but then the second and third units are things that I just want to read more about. So I assign readings that I want to get done myself so that there's a lot of overlap between the readings I assign and my own research and writing. Now, when there's that kind of overlap, it's a win-win for everybody because you're more excited about it, and that translates as better teaching. But also your students, they get to read cutting edge or very modern, up-to-date readings in the field. So back to this idea of how to get yourself to read and how to get the students to read. So I get myself to read by assigning things that I want to read for some other purpose as well, so that all my reading has dual purpose, my research and my writing and my teaching, so that it's connected to everything else that I'm doing. And as far as getting students to read, if you get students to present an article or a chapter, then what I tell them is, and I give them structure around this, I usually say, okay, you need to present. I actually usually tell them, I don't want you to do a PowerPoint. Instead, I want you to ask 5 discussion questions and lead discussion in the same way that I lead discussion. Or I want you to pull 10 keywords, and I want you to work with your fellow students to have them define the keywords. If they come in the room to present and the other students haven't read, then the presenting students are going to be screwed. And since everybody has to present, it gives some peer pressure to getting the readings done because the class will fall flat if people don't read, and it's torturous. So I emphasize that to my students. Another thing that you can do is have, let's say a student is presenting an article, have them send pre-written discussion questions, and students have to come with notes answering those questions, and then the student leads the discussion. And in terms of grading those notes, those answers to discussion questions that students have to come in with, you can simply walk around the room and check off like they did it or they didn't. So that's one way. But you also can work to build a culture inside of your classroom that people aren't going to let down the other students and show up without having done the work. Hard to do, depends on context, but possible. Okay, so to address a common problem with teaching, how do I get my reading done and how do I get my students to do the reading? That's how I address that problem. Another time-saving teaching technique is to create opportunities for in-the-moment assessment. So a lot of times this moment in the semester, this week 11 or 12, we feel frustrated, we feel behind, we have a stack of something that we need to grade on our desk, and it feels like a lot. But we also know that good teaching involves assessment, right? So we can't just walk in the room and pontificate and then go home. No, we do need to assess our students. So one way that you can do that in a time-efficient way is to create opportunities for in-the-moment assessment. And this can be done with apps, with clickers. It would be one way to do it in a big group, but really be able to have on-the-fly, in-the-moment opportunities for assessment. That way you are checking in with students. You could do, like a digital quiz. So many ways that you could use. I think Kahoot is an app that my master's students are often using in their first year writing classes. And just create something that can serve as an assessment, that can give you feedback on what the students know and what they still need to learn. But that doesn't involve you taking stacks of paper home. Okay, to circle back a little bit to the template idea, another thing that you can do is to reuse assignment structures. So that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the midterms and final projects, and really creating a template for different kinds of assignments, which are also assessments, that you want to do with your students, and reusing those, not reinventing the wheel, but rather refining and creating types of assignments and types of assessments that work for you. Things that are easier for you to grade, that you can systematize the grading, or that you can do the grading on the fly. So one way that I love to do on the fly grading is, when students do those presentations, or when they even do a more formal presentation, I print a paper rubric and I assess in the moment. That eliminates you taking home a bunch of grading. So what I would say is, if you are in a field where you end up taking home a lot of grading, that you think about the ways to maximize the effectiveness of the huge amount of time that you spend grading, for example, essays or long answer exam questions, or even short answer exam questions. Use those when you most need to, and create different types of on the fly, in the moment assessments and assignments, and create on the fly ways to grade those. Also, circling back to the template idea is to think about modular themes that could work in different classes that you teach. So I talked about using a 3-unit structure and how that was the way I was taught to teach. And actually, I use that structure almost every time in my classes. Well, one of those units might be able to be moved into another course, and you wouldn't have to recreate it. So for example, there's plenty of overlap between bilingualism and sociolinguistics. And so maybe there would be parts of those units, or even wholesale units, that I could use for both classes. Or if you teach at both the undergraduate and graduate level, think about ways that you take the undergraduate syllabus and kind of amplify it for the grad level, or expand it out for the grad level. The idea is to reuse as much as possible, and even create these modular pieces of courses that could be used and recycled into other courses. All right. Well, I hope I've given you some ideas for how to get through these next few weeks of the semester, and also how to think about your next semester so that you save time and stress in your teaching. Remember, between now and the end of the semester is actually the best time to create the syllabus for January. And the reason is that right now it is very clear to you what needs to stay and what needs to go. You right now are wishing that you didn't assign X, Y, or Z. So it's time for you to do a favor to your future self and write that down. Start a document where you're pre-planning for next semester if you don't have time to do a full out plan for next semester. One thing you could also do is open up the document of your course syllabus and use the notes feature to write some notes right now. These are like notes from week 11. What kinds of things would you do differently when you teach that course again? And because we often don't teach, we're not teaching the same course in September as we are in January. A lot of times what happens is the next time we teach what we're teaching right now, it's a year from now and you're going to forget. So do your future self a favor and take some notes. You can call them notes to my future self about what you would change to make this syllabus or this way that you're delivering the class easier for you. Well, I hope that you've learned some time-saving teaching nuggets during this podcast. So to recap, writing and teaching aren't at odds. Research and teaching aren't at odds. Being an excellent researcher and an excellent teacher are married together. They are a yin and yang, maybe. They feed off of each other. The better you are as a researcher, the better you'll be as a teacher. And the more that you can connect your teaching to your research interests, the better teacher you'll be. If you are pre-tenure and on the tenure track, a lot of us dealing with these issues are, then I would like to let you know that my Amplify Faculty Writing Accelerator program is open for enrollment right now. We've moved to a rolling admissions model so that you can join as soon as possible. And all you need to do is go to http://bit.ly/pre-tenure to apply. Now, Amplify is a year-long supportive program whose goal is to make the pre-tenure prep experience, right? The preparation for going up for tenure feel less like hazing and more like inspiration. What we do in the program is help you to develop yourself as a writer and a better organizer of your academic life so that you can go up for tenure with confidence. And the way that we do this is through a unique to academia group coaching system that I call masterminding. The mastermind groups are run in small cohorts so that you travel through the program with women who you develop a deep peer mentoring relationship with. All the mastermind calls are guided by a writing coach. And what happens in those calls is that every week or every call, the calls are an hour long, every call, 2 women get to be in the hot seat. And what that means is that you get about half an hour to bring your questions, concerns, problems, roadblocks to the group and get feedback. And because the group is made up of diverse women from diverse fields and diverse types of universities, you get a kind of feedback that you would never get from a peer mentor at your own institution or a mentor at your own institution, that you would never get from your academic advisor. It is truly a unique experience and a super valuable one. I've had women in Amplify tell me that they thought that what they needed to get their writing done was accountability, but then they learned that what they actually needed was community. And this is a community-based program. It is based on developing relationships of trust with a small group of academic women, and having access to top-notch coaching and training that is going to help you to take your academic career to the next level. Because it's such a community-based program, we have an application process. We don't just take anybody. We're carefully admitting participants all the time. And here's the process. When you go to http://bit.ly/pre-tenure, and we'll link that up in the show notes. When you go there, what you will find is a beautiful Typeform form that is it's less than 10 questions long. And it's going to ask you some contact information and then some information about where you are on the tenure track and what kinds of obstacles you're facing right now. Once you fill out that application, you will be directed to schedule a 10-minute Tenure 10 call. On the Tenure 10 call, you get introduced to one of my amazing coaches, and she will do kind of like a rapid fire interview process with you. And even though it feels a little rapid fire, like a little bit of an interrogation, what it helps you do, the questions that we ask you help us to know if you're a good fit for the program and are helping you to articulate where you really need work and where you really need help. So even if that's all you do, you will leave with the clarity of, oh, wow, I didn't think that this was one of my problems, but through this series of questions, I figured out that it is, and now I can go work on that. If everyone decides that you are a good fit for the program, you'll be invited to have a free tenure strategy session with me. And what we do in that longer session is talk about where you are, where you want to go, and the best path for you to get tenure without breaking down or burning out. And that is about a half an hour call. It's one-on-one with me. It's free. If you decide to enroll in the program, we can enroll you right then and start our onboarding process. And what onboarding means is just kind of like your first year student orientation process. And our process for that involves a one-on-one call that gets you set up and directs you to the trainings where you need to start. And then we will match you or place you into your mastermind group, and you will be on your way in the program. Applications are open now. The program is open for enrollment right now. And you might be thinking, Kathy, why the heck are you telling me about this in November when I'm stressed out and I don't know, I can't see past the next 4 weeks? Well, what I want to tell you is that I know that you don't want to feel this level of stress all the time. And I also know that the trainings and community that we offer in this program will help you to combat the levels of stress that you're currently experiencing. I also know that you don't want 2020 to be like 2019 was. So it's time to apply, to learn something different, to get the support you really need and you really deserve, and make 2020 amazing. All right, apply today for Amplify. I can't wait to talk to you. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time loving on yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join the over 7,000 academic women in the I Should Be Writing Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/groups/I Should Be Writing or search for I Should Be Writing inside your Facebook app. See you inside.